Aloha, Inspired Moneymaker. Thanks for tuning in. If this is your first time with us, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back to Inspired Money. I'm your host, Andy Wong, aka Advisor Andy. This is Inspired Money, where we talk about making smarter money moves so you can live a richer life, however you define it. In this episode, we're diving into a topic that touches each and every one of us, navigating life's big transitions. Whether it's merging finances with a partner, switching careers, supporting both kids and aging parents, rebuilding after a divorce or loss, or designing a meaningful second act, these changes can feel overwhelming. And here's the truth. The emotional side of this transition, it can hit just as hard as the financial one. But with the right guidance, these moments don't have to feel destabilizing. They can become opportunities to reset, rethink, and rebuild with clarity and confidence. That's why we've brought together a powerhouse panel of experts who know these transitions inside and out. They've helped people move through change, make better decisions, and come out stronger on the other side. So if you are in the middle of a transition or you're preparing for the next chapter, stick around. You're exactly in the right place. Before we jump in, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Seeking Alpha, and their biggest sale of the year is officially live through December 10th. If you've been waiting to level up your investing research, this is the moment. Seeking Alpha is offering 20% off all their subscriptions. So their premium, which is normally $299 for the year, it's $239. Plus you can get a 7-day free trial for new subscribers. Their Alpha Picks is discounted $100 from $499 to $399. And then their Alpha Picks premium bundle from $798, it is now $574. And there's one more. For serious investors, their Pro version drops from $2,400 for the year to $1,920. This is their deepest discount of the year, and they run very few promotions, so it's the best time to jump in. You'll get expert stock analysis, quant ratings, earnings insights, and the tools that thousands of investors rely on. The sale ends December 10th. You can upgrade your investing toolkit with Seeking Alpha while the Black Friday deal is live. Go to inspiredmoney.fm/alpha. Now let's bring in our guests. First, we're joined by Dr. Preston Cherry, financial psychologist, certified financial planner. He's author of Wealth and the Key of Life, as the founder of Concurrent Financial Planning and director of financial planning of the financial planning program at the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. Preston blends money expertise with emotional insight, helping people to navigate life's transitions with clarity and confidence through his life money balance philosophy. Preston, welcome back.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you for having me.
We're glad that you have your voice this time. Last time you gave all kinds of valuable info and you had to like squeak it out.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
And joining us as well is Mariko Gordon, CFA, CFP, and CEO of Uzume LLC, and the former founder of Daruma Capital, where she built a $2.5 billion investment firm with a distinctive, unconventional approach. With over 30 years as a small cap stock picker and entrepreneur, Mariko now helps individuals and families navigate life decisions, money, business, and transition with equal parts insight, clarity, and candid wisdom. Mariko, glad that you could join.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Our next guest is Jackie Cummings-Koski, a CFP, accredited financial counselor, award-winning educator, and author of Fire for Dummies. Jackie reached financial independence and retired early in her 40s. After overcoming poverty, divorce, and single motherhood, today she co-hosts the Catching Up to FI podcast, empowering people at every stage of life to build financial literacy and take control of their financial futures. Jackie, welcome.
Hey, Andy. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Excited to have you. And rounding out our panel today, we have Jack Campbell, CEO and founder of Alexander Legacy Private Wealth. Jack's career started with a high school internship at Comerica's private bank and grew into leading a $1.8 billion investment team at Chase Wealth Management. She's now a nationally recognized wealth strategist, community leader, and mentor who champions legacy building, inclusion, and generational impact. Jack, welcome.
So glad to be here, Andy. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you. I hear that had you not become a CFP and come into the financial services business, you aspired to be the next Oprah.
Absolutely. That was one of my dreams when I was a high school intern. I never thought I was going to end up in this industry. Now it's been 32 years since that moment. I thought I was going to leave the industry and go off to Hollywood and be the next Oprah. But I'm so blessed to be able to be on podcasts like this. So I get a chance to live my inner Oprah and still also be part of this great industry.
With Jack's high energy, going to keep me sharp on my toes. And I'm really excited to jump into talking about how we handle and plan for life's transitions. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started with segment 1.
Combining finances is not just about spreadsheets. It's about building trust while preserving independence. The most effective framework for modern couples is the yours, mine, and ours system. A joint account covers shared expenses and long-term goals, while individual accounts provide each partner with autonomy and guilt-free spending. This balance prevents day-to-day conflicts over minor purchases while keeping both partners engaged in the bigger picture. Success begins with full financial disclosure, assets, debts, income, and credit scores, followed by creating a shared plan for goals like debt payoff, home ownership, or retirement. To stay aligned, schedule regular money meetings to review progress and make adjustments. Treat them like business check-ins, agenda-driven, constructive, and future-focused. By combining teamwork with autonomy, couples can merge finances without losing their individual identities, creating a financial system that supports both partnership and independence.
Preston, you talk about life-money balance. What's the most important values conversations couples must have before they merge anything financially?
Well, it's really about understanding one another, and that is listening. I remember there was a scene in the movie White Man Can't Jump. It was like, remember, I think it was Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes. They were talking, "Are you hearing Jimmy? Are you listening to Jimmy? Right? Are you here?" And you got to be able to listen. You got to be able to listen. And listen with intention, and have it willingly listen to whomever you're speaking with and not to. And that conversation is very important, particularly if you get to have it before you go into a relationship. Sometimes that's, that conversation is not had, and you have to have it, as you're going along. And that conversation, even if you have it before or after, those conversations are going to continue. It's a continuum of conversation because there's going to be growth all through the relationship and the marriage. And these conversations have to be set regularly, and there's going to be life phases through the marriage as well. So there's going to be changes that come along, and those conversations are going to capture those adjustments along the way, and those can be captured and better understood.
Mariko, you say that numbers are only half of the story. What practical process helps couples to cut through emotion and get to clarity on something like yours, mine, and ours?
I think there's a couple of key things. One is understanding everyone's money genealogy, the sort of legacy of money beliefs, and also whatever personal financial trauma we might have been through or our family has been through. So I think it's important to understand the money background and the money psychology that each partner is operating under. That's one thing. The other thing that I think is really important is that, particularly if one partner stays at home, the stay-at-home partner's contribution to the partnership, because it's often intangible, although quite sizable, but it doesn't have a dollar price tag. It's not generating dollars. it can be very easy to dismiss that or not to acknowledge that. And I think it's important to make the intangible tangible and visible, like apply whatever the market rates are for all that work that's being done, so that there's an ongoing understanding. So, after 20 years, there isn't this, well, I made all the money, you just stayed home. And I think that's really important to acknowledge that, the partnership, the economic ecosystem is not just income and expenses. It's also all the other intangible things as well, and to look at it holistically that way.
I like the money genealogy. I'm sure that there are many out there who feel like they're orphaned, but we're going to figure out how they can do better. Jackie, I know that you've rebuilt financially after divorce. How does that experience shape your view on merging finances without losing independence?
Yeah, if I had to go back and do some things different, I definitely would have had a lot more communication. And I think I was taking things literally, like, combining finances. Does that mean that every single account need to have both names? It doesn't even need to mean that, but the overall big picture, like Preston was saying, is very, very important, because, at the point of my divorce, I realized a huge disparity in the retirement accounts that I had no idea about, was because we didn't look at that. Now, being on the other side of it after we got divorced and everything, I realized how much more conversation we should have been having, how much more we should have been merging our finances, in the sense of putting everything in a pile, not necessarily names being on things. That is a personal decision. So upon reflection, there was not enough of communication, and it could lead to, things like divorce or having issues within, your marriage that might stem from that, but they show up in other ways.
Yeah, in looking back, I guess with the advantage of hindsight being 2020, are there things that you would find negotiable versus non-negotiable?
I think as far as negotiable, it would be, I wish we would have spent more time on the retirement accounts. We were so young. When you're so young, you're not even thinking about that, but we should have been looking at those together. That should have been non-negotiable. And even though we had a divide and conquer mentality, I think it was important to still have the monthly or the annual or quarterly money meetings where we talked about everything, so that the other person knew about what the person in charge for that particular task or that area was supposed to do. So to me, having a regular money meeting would be a non-negotiable. I think that's absolutely critical, because you don't know when something is going to happen where both of you need to be aware of what's going on, regardless of who the primary person is on that.
So the importance of communication and really facilitating ways for partners, because I think it's going to be different for everybody, but what's going to work for you so that you can continue to have those money conversations. Jack, what's a tension point that you often see in high net worth couples?
Absolutely. And I would say what we're seeing right now is preparing for that next generation, and really thinking about, as we're seeing, these high net worth families start to, especially Gen 1, as they start to age, how are they thinking about their wealth transfer, this great wealth transfer that we're currently embarking upon? And do we have the next matriarch or patriarch already identified? And have we started to really pour the necessary resources and tools and information into that next gen to be able to really prepare them to steward the wealth for the family, so that that generational wealth can continue? And so that's really what I'm seeing at the table when it comes to the family office space or the high net worth space, is really that preparation. Because again, some of the children, may or may not be part of the family enterprise. And so it's really about maybe even bringing in outsiders and other people that might actually be part of really stewarding that wealth properly. So that's where, we're seeing, I would say, not necessarily maybe tension points, but, some real priorities that are really being placed at the table around educating and really, really identifying who that next matriarch or patriarch is going to be.
I love it. Anybody else want to chime in on this one, on this couples and money playbook?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Jackie was hitting on something here, which is important. Thank you for sharing the reflection, Jackie, because that's very important.
Yeah.
Blocking out noise is very important because nowadays in the media and all this, we're very individualistic in our society and our news and our approach to things now. It's like mine is mine and this, that, and the other. And the attitudes coming into marriage or even adjusting to marriage now is like, oh, I need to protect myself. And so the approach to marriage is different nowadays and all this. So my suggestion or my advice of what I'm seeing is to block out noise. The marriage is if we can understand that it's a household, that the household unit. And this is where I use a model called financial unity. And it's coming together first. You don't necessarily have to lose your identity, but if you come together and agree on a household goal, a household mission statement, then you've agreed that the household is the mission. And then you can better understand each other's individuals' perspectives and individual pathways, but you've understood and agreed that the household is the unit, right? And I have this album right here. I think right here, the OJ's, a family reunion, old school, right? And so when you understand that the household is the unit, and block out some of the noise about what's yours is yours and mine is mine. Yes, you can have your own identities and approach to your finances how you want, as Jackie mentioned. But some of it is noise, and having a household as a unit as the goal better smooths out some of the conflict.
Block out the noise so you can make music.
Yeah.
I think also one thing that's important is for sometimes there's one partner who is more financially literate or interested and all of that, and then does all the emotional labor around the finances and carries a psychological burden. So I think it's really important, not just in those meetings to know what's going on, but the transparency is important, but also that it's the stewardship of the household unit's well-being, financial well-being is a shared responsibility, even if there's someone who's taking the lead. And I meet a lot of spouses later in life who really want to know, really understand what's going on because they haven't had the responsibility. And if something happens to their other half, they'll feel lost. So I think it's also just important that the same way as with parenting, right? That there might be somebody who's taking the lead, but the other person that doesn't give the other person, a hall pass to just check out. It's just not fair.
Don't be afraid to be involved. And even if it's not taking the lead role, you should still have a role. Let's move on to segment 2.
A career change or business launch can be transformative, but it requires careful financial planning. Start with your runway, the cash buffer that covers essentials without new income. For a job switch, 3 to 6 months of expenses works. For a business launch, build 12 to 18 months to handle both personal and startup costs. Protect your retirement savings by rolling over your 401k into an IRA or new plan. Never take a cash distribution. Health coverage must also be secured. Evaluate employer plans, COBRA, and Affordable Care Act options before you resign. Entrepreneurs face added complexity. Self-employment tax of 15.3% and quarterly estimated payments. Open a separate account, set aside 25 to 35% of every payment, and use tools like a simplified employee pension plan, also known as a SEP IRA for tax advantage savings. Finally, create 2 budgets, one lean, personal version, and one for your business's growth. With a clear checklist and disciplined execution, you replace risk with readiness, turning uncertainty into opportunity.
Mariko, when someone's preparing for a career pivot or launching a business, what's the smartest pre-leap financial move you think that most people overlook?
I think it's making sure you have enough runway. and understanding, really understanding your personal fixed costs, your variable cost, having enough of a cushion. I think business plans are nice conceptually, but I think life, it's like, as Mike Tyson said, right? I think, everyone's prepared until they get punched in the face. And launching a business is a very, you learn by trial and error. It's just from failure to failure, and that's how you just have to forge ahead. So I think part of it is just being as prepared as you can, and also getting really uncomfortable with uncertainty and that, and then also knowing when you're going to pull the plug if you have to. Because I think sometimes we have a sunk cost, or we don't want to give up, and we're like really loyal to this idea of this thing that we want to do, and it could destroy us, right? So I think sometimes having ahead of time, you say, look, at this point, if I'm not here, or I don't have visibility over the next 3 months of being here, then I'm gonna punch out, and it's gonna be okay, and I'm not gonna feel like a horrible person, because really it's very hard to run a successful, to launch a successful business and to to have it be successful on an ongoing. There are seasons in life, there are seasons in business, but I think that's the important thing, is to kind of know not to live in the wreckage of your future and already be assuming failure and all of that, but more that this is a time to just cut back and regroup and think through. And I think that is an important thing that people don't really talk about. You don't have to commit financial scorched earth destruction to
Jack, I see you nodding a lot. What systems do you advise new business owners to take or set up in the first 90 days to avoid some of the, I guess to take some of the punches that you're going to take?
I'm going to go a little off kind of like the typical systems and say the first thing you need is to have your personal board of directors around you. I would say, one of the things, if you're looking to go into business for yourself, the first thing I would absolutely recommend is find those people that have gone into business for themselves, been punched in the face a couple times, and now are running a successful business, so that you do have the right mentors and resources around you. And that has to be really, for those first 90 days, as we think about like the first 100 that, presidents do for, the first 90 days of your business is very critical. But I do think having the right mentors and having the right team around you is really where it starts. It's really about human capital.
Jackie, achieving FIRE through major life changes and career changes, what did you learn about building a cushion or runway, as Mariko mentioned, that applies to someone switching jobs or striking out on their own?
Yeah, I learned a lot, and I think it's very, very similar. First of all, the word like entrepreneurship or starting a business, it's very scary, because now it's all on you. There's a lot of people, including myself, that worked a regular 9-to-5 day job their entire life. And so in doing that, we got the paycheck every 2 weeks, and we got the benefits and all of that. So it's a huge mind shift to say, now I have to make sure that I have my health insurance, that I have everything that I need, that I got, that was provided to me by my employer. So I think the mental work is extremely important. And then once I got on the other side of that, it felt freeing. I think about all the dumb stuff that used to go on at work, where I'm like, wait a minute, I could do this smarter. I need to be doing this different. So it was so great moving forward once I got over that mental hump of providing for myself and designing all the things that I once got from an employer. Now I could customize it for myself and be more creative, more innovative, doing cool things like this, on your live. So it's a wonderful point once you have gotten over some of the fear and some of the hard things that, frankly, a lot of people never start or never make that leap to entrepreneurship or building a business for fear of some of those technical things.
Mental humps. Let's go to the financial psychologist. Preston, career changes clearly are emotional as much financial. How do you help clients to navigate this emotional roller coaster of a major career pivot?
Ooh, there's a lot. First of all, I want to commend Mariko for a good point, which is sometimes it's not a failure to, just go roll back in sometimes into a job. And because some entrepreneurs out here should have never left their job. All right. That's that's number one. All right. Because and not entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And this battle out here, this is more noise. It's more noise that entrepreneurship is the only answer to financial and life success. I mean, that's not true either. And so that goes back to leaving your job prematurely, your 9 to 5 prematurely. And so that's part of the runway as well, which is planning your exit before you get into entrepreneurship. So take a year, take 18 months and plan your exit while you're getting ready to go. Because once you unplug, I mean, you out there for sure. You out there in the cold with no coat, so you need to go ahead and get ready for that. Also, too, is when you're in entrepreneurship, I mean, like Jackie was talking about, you need a community of support, because that is shocking. You're going to need a support with those first 90 days, that first year, because businesses are not successful out of the gate most of the time. And for those that want to be entrepreneurs, you're going to need that support to get through that first channel, and you're going to need some money in your pocket in order to get through that first channel. So there's a lot of aspects of entrepreneurship that are important to get through and to your goal.
A lot of value there, because it's often said that entrepreneurship and business ownership can be far more lonely than one would think. So to have that network,
absolutely. It can wear on your mind, and to make that decision to do what you have to do, perhaps to go about your well-being. And sometimes that means, and I think there was somebody here recently on social media who got drove for telling somebody to get a job from entrepreneurship. I forgot her name, but she got drove for telling somebody to get a job. It's like, hey, sometimes you got to make that decision and regroup and for your own well-being.
Thank you for that. Let's move on to segment 3.
Being in the sandwich generation means managing financial responsibilities in 3 directions: your own retirement, your children's future, and your parents' care. The guiding rule is to protect your retirement first. There are loans for college and programs for elder care, but there is no loan for your retirement. With parents, your role is often to act as CFO, not ATM, helping them organize budgets, access benefits, and plan for long-term care before offering direct financial support. With children, save what you can in a 529 plan, but set clear expectations and encourage scholarships and federal loans. For both generations, clarity comes from honest conversations and a structured plan. By prioritizing your own stability and taking a leadership role, you can manage the squeeze without compromising your future, ensuring support across generations is sustainable rather than reactive.
I like the imagery there with the high chairs on one side and the recliner on the other. Jack, you've worked with families navigating multiple generations' needs. What distinguishes those who manage the sandwich years successfully from those who just feel constantly overwhelmed?
It goes back to what we talked about earlier, and it's really about education. I would say the ones that have navigated the sandwich generation successfully, I'll even talk about my own story. My mother, at the age of 16, I was learning about money and finance. At the age of 16, I was understanding, she had me understand what entrepreneurship was. She had me understanding what EBITDA was, even at the tender age of 16 years old. And so I think the earlier we can get the younger and the next generation involved in, financial decisions and really teaching our next gen. I have a 16-year-old and he has been getting taught finances since he was 7 years old. And so I think that, the more that we can train our next gen, now people like me who at one point was 7 years old, getting that same training from my mother, now pushing 50 years old. Now I am now able to help my mother in her business and really be the succession plan for her. And so what does that mean for us? That means that it's not the squeeze. I'm not having to fuel my mother's lifestyle or fuel my sister's lifestyle or fuel my children's lifestyle, because they've all been well trained when it comes to education around financial literacy. So I would say, and the financial literacy is not just about the next generation. I'll also say it's, I do a lot of financial education with baby boomers. I'm often called into some of the churches and community centers and into fraternities and sororities to train people who are getting ready to retire. And frankly, for like someone like myself, I recently lost my father. And so I'm talking with a lot of people who are in my age group, Gen X, about dealing with transition and dealing with, aging parents that may be ready to transition and how to then navigate being now the new elder of the family. When we start to lose our parents, now we graduate into that role of being that matriarch and that patriarch. So there's a lot of unique things happening right now in the marketplace. I would definitely say, I know Preston talks about this a lot, especially with Gen X, because many of us are navigating the kids, the parents, the siblings, and some of us are being squeezed, especially if we're the successful one in the family. And some of us there's a pressure on us to make sure that the baton continues and that the generational wealth that hopefully our parents really wanted for us, we're able to help our children sustain that and not be part of that, what they call shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
Sorry to hear about your father's passing, and thank you for sharing your personal story.
Thank you.
Preston, this comes back to your life money balance again. How can families approach tough conversations, especially limits on financial support across generations?
Yes. Well, first of all, have them. It takes a lot of courage to have these tough conversations, but they're very necessary, because if you're not having the necessary conversations, then the tough conversations become a lot tougher later on down the line, and because they become disastrous. And I'm sure a lot of folks have, on this call, have stories within themselves, because every family, it's called the humanity of money. Every family has tough conversations, and they get disastrous down the line if you don't have them at all. And at death, or at deathbeds, or at sickness, or when everybody's broke, then it's, you have the family reunion and everybody's at each other's throats, right? That's too late. That's too late. So that's way too late. And so if you're having the conversations that need to be had, then when you get through them at the end, and sometimes when you get through, maybe you got to cuss each other out a couple times. But I'm serious. This is being real, y'all, because if you have a real family, then after that, you're like, okay, like Lean On Me said, all right, now let's go get something to eat, right? Right. But see, after that, then there's better outcomes after that, because now you can get to some results after that. And so this is where generational, you avoid some of the barriers after that, because you have conversations that go into wills. You got conversations that go into trust. You got conversations that go into elderly care. You got conversations that go into who's going to do the assignments, who's going to do the tasks, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. So there's better understandings with some of those challenging conversations after you have them. And that way you can give money and family assignments to things after those conversations.
Thank you for keeping it real. Sometimes you have to rip that Band-Aid off. Jackie, can you share some tips about budgeting strategies to help people support multiple generations without derailing their own retirement?
Yeah. Ooh, that is the very, very delicate balance, which I'm dealing with now. So Preston has a little one, my grandbaby. She is 6 weeks old today. So I'm having to think about these things right now. How much do I put in her 529? What do I still do for my daughter? What about, my aunt is still living, what do I need to do there? And I think, it is kind of delicate, and you always need to look at yourself first. I think I'm okay financially, but I never underestimate, the value of like teaching, like, making sure my budget is okay, obviously. Right. But the things that I have taught my daughter, even though I'm not seeing it all come out today, I know she's going to be okay because of the way she thinks. So after having the baby, the medical bills are coming. Now, it would be easy for me to say, honey, I'll take care of those medical bills for you. But I'm trying to teach a lesson over here. So I know that she has the knowledge and the fortitude that I taught her to work through them. And there's a lesson to be learned. Now, she's probably hating on me right now for it, but she's smart enough to figure that out. And I want to see her figure that out. When my grandbaby gets a little bit older, I want her to figure some things out. The answer is not always financial. A lot of times the answer is, how do I help them build this knowledge so that they'll be okay? If you fall a little bit, that's fine. I'll help you get up. But take advantage of the value of knowledge versus just looking at how do I go in my pocket to solve the problems.
I love it. I mean, you're in a position where it sounds like you're willing to let them make the mistakes because that's how they're going to learn.
Yeah, it's hard to do, but I remember a few conversations when she was in high school that I had to do the hard thing. She's had the cries and all this type of stuff. And deep inside, I'm thinking about, what my dad would have done. And it's like, these lessons are worth it. You're not hurt. You're still safe. And I know on the other side, you're going to grow from it. So I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to make that investment.
Mariko, when families are stretched thin, are there things that they can do structurally, like segmenting accounts or making spending rules that can help them stay financially sane during these sandwich years?
Wow, financial sanity is a really important priority in life. And depending on how dysfunctional your family and how codependent and enabling and all of that stuff, wow. So I don't have an easy answer for you, Andy. I will say, and this is a little cynical, but it is important to know, particularly, as a I think as a parent, of children who aren't adult yet, they're a financial liability. Children are expensive, right? But for your parents, do you know if they're an asset or a liability for you, right? Which is kind of a very perhaps cold way of looking at it, but it's important because if you don't know, right, that's a big red flag. So I think that's important to know. And that means that you haven't had the conversations, or your parents might be super paranoid and you're not supposed to know and all of that stuff. But I would start there. Like, do you know if they're an asset or a liability? Because if you don't know that, then it's hard to figure out the planning. And the other stuff is around, I think, guilt and cultural expectation. Because I'm half Okinawan. And, in my my in that lineage, the eldest son got everything, but the eldest son was supposed to, or his wife, or more appropriately, or more truthfully, was the one who took care of the parents, right? And so they're living, and I think there are a lot of different cultures that have cultural norms, and it can be modern day financial reality, in conflict with cultural norms is tough and needs to be acknowledged and navigated. The other thing that I would say too is in some families and cultures, there's a like a codependency that's encouraged. Like, girls are like, oh no, you'll be taken care of. You don't need to know this stuff. Oh no, I'm not going to teach you about the family business because, you'll get married, or there's one kid who's a golden child and the other kids are, so I think it's important to be able to see the person, as Jackie was saying, in their power, and being able to be that backstop, and sort of the life net, but not kind of cutting off their power by solving the problem for them, but being able to see them as capable of solving the problems themselves, and to answer, that was a long way of not answering your question, Andy, but to really answer it, that's when you sit down and you come up with the plan, right? You start with the cash flow, what's coming in, what's going out, and, and you just, you have to go with that.
Anybody else want to respond? I see Preston.
Yeah, just real quick. Affirmation is very important. Just affirming culture is just like Mariko was saying, for sure, because there's some aspects of money beliefs and money cultures that we're going to have to elevate because they're they're beautiful and you want to continue it on in legacy, but there's also some that you have to address and then talk through and maybe be introduced to something that you may have to work on that may be a barrier, and it may be a barrier to your progression. And so, for that codependency perhaps, or having that cultural obligation to family, right? And so there's a lot. I was just speaking with somebody the other day that was going to ruin themselves in order to help a family member because of the cultural obligation. And quick story. My dad. And my mom, they were going through some struggles earlier in their finances, and they believed if it wasn't bolted down, then it was for sale. And my dad, he jokingly one time, he was offering one of his kids. He said, "Do y'all need a kid? Because I got one for sale right here." So I shared with this individual. I shared, well, did your family members sell all they got before they asked you to run up their credit card bill? And this is real, because they were about to do irreparable harm to their finances. And so this is one of the things about cultural family obligations. Here's another one before I let this topic go, which is kids, adult children. When parents ask themselves, I use this I share this with my clients. I said, ask yourself, are you content with the financial and emotional investment you've made into your children at this point? And I'll pause. And the reason that question is there is because at 22, 23, 24, 25, all right, are you going to continue to invest this line item of well-being and also finances into your children of 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, 90? I've seen up to $100,000 into your adult children and ruin your finances. You see? So all that one question has a line item adjusted to it, just like that one person that I was speaking with about that family obligation that was going to ruin their credit and all that, just because they felt the obligation. So that emotional and psychological, all those obligations that Mariko was talking about, they all have line items and repercussions to them if you don't address them.
Thank you for those stories. Let's bring it home and go to the last. Wait, are we at the last segment? No, I think we're at segment 4. I'm losing count.
When life shifts from shared to solo, financial clarity becomes your first priority. Begin with triage. Secure legal documents, separate accounts, and update passwords. In divorce, ensure the QDRO or QDRO is executed to protect retirement assets without penalties. After a loss, collect multiple death certificates, inform institutions, and manage access to joint accounts. Most urgent, change your beneficiaries. These override your will and determine who receives your assets. Avoid assuming they'll default to your wishes. Once the immediate pressure stabilizes, create a new financial plan shaped around your income, goals, and values. Reevaluate your retirement timeline, reset your estate documents, and reestablish credit in your name. This is your chance to design with intention. Don't go it entirely alone. Build your advisory circle, a financial planner, estate attorney, and CPA. The Solo Act is not survival, it's your full command performance, crafted on your terms, driven by clarity.
Jack, what's your best advice here? Because this is a complicated situation. It's one where you might need to hold space for grief, while at the same time guiding financial recovery.
So I'm going to just jump in, because I think as I was watching that, it just kind of took me to my own story, right? As I go through, some of my own journeys right now, losing, say, a parent, right? And also going through the grief of that, while also having to then step up as the now matriarch and to be settling the estate. And so there's just there's a lot of feelings that come across. I hope I'm answering this right, but when I think about grief right now, that grief is not just the emotional grief, it is financial grief. There's a lot of things that need to happen now that since one family member is no longer part of the story. And so it is sitting down, it's having, very honest conversations with certain members of the family to understand. And that comes with even another level of grief. And so anyway, yes, I'll pause there. I'm sure I'll jump back in, but there's a lot to be said when it comes to navigating grief and navigating it financially. And also, as somebody who's an expert in this, going through it myself has been a very interesting time as well.
Jackie, what's your biggest financial lesson going through divorce and going on this solo transition?
Yeah, very much solo. For me, it's been a little bit longer. So, Jack, so sorry about, your dad and everything. So for me, it's well over 10 years, maybe pushing even 20 years. And whether it's divorce or death, both of them is a huge traumatic experience. And you have to allow yourself time to grieve, time to reflect. Sometimes you just need to sit in a dark corner by yourself. So when I share my story, yes, I'm fire now. I was behind, I caught up, I learned all this financial stuff. But I always like to stress that it took 2 years, nearly 2 years, for me to really be at a point where I could actually start moving and doing something different. You have to give yourself grace, give yourself the time. There's only a handful of things that probably need to be addressed right away. Maybe your insurances, make sure you got health insurance if it was happen to be through your partner, life insurance, things like that, custody stuff. But if you give yourself the time to actually reflect and acknowledge that you need to make sure you're okay inside and mentally before you can really start doing something and feeling good about it and having the fortitude to actually move forward. So that would be sort of the early stuff to think about. And again, once you're through that hump, that's a big, tough hump. You are going to be able to do extraordinary things because you're able to think clearly. Your mind is able to focus on things and focus on the future when before you got a lot of cloudiness going on, a lot of changes, so many things happening. Everybody you run into or asking you whether, it's a divorce or, a death of a spouse, they want to talk about it. And I know I was to the point where I got tired of talking about it. So I kind of got some different people around me. And that was so helpful for my mind to go different places other than, the trauma that I had just going through, that I had more in the future than had happened to me and more than what was in the past too.
Can I jump in one more time? I'm so glad you brought that up because, to your point, even myself, I've gone through in the last 2 years, I've gone through a divorce myself and now a death. And so, navigating both divorce and death, and then also working with clients. A lot of my clients, unfortunately, 50% of them have either gone through a death or divorce in most recent, in the most recent, call it 3 to 5 years. And so I love what you said about grace, because I think that's where many of us, especially those of us that are, the one in the family, and it's like we're supposed to be the tough one that nothing ever happens to. You're not supposed to get divorced. You're not supposed to have a death, and then it actually happens to you. And so I like to say to my clients now, I'm like, guess what? It happened to me too. And I'm going through it right along with you. And the first thing I had to do, even for myself, was to give myself that grace and to remind myself that, you said something so powerful, Jackie. You said, that the latter days, I always say the latter days should be greater than the former, but it's getting through and making sure that I have the right team around me. Because that kind of trauma, having a divorce, having death, I also had a baby in the midst of this, y'all. And I started a new business in the midst of this, y'all. And I relocated to a whole new state. So you're talking about 5 major life events in the last 3 years have happened. And so I do believe when those things happen, and those are financial events, they're personal events, but they're major financial events. So I'm very, very keen about going back to what I said earlier, surrounding myself with those experts that can be there through me, through the trauma, and then be there on the other side as we rebuild.
Mariko, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's really the rule of thumb that I would say is whenever you have a profound identity shift, right? So that's becoming a parent or becoming a spouse or selling your business or closing your business or losing a spouse or losing a child or losing a parent. Whenever there's a profound identity shift that now you're no longer the child because you no longer have a parent, right? That it's an emotionally loaded time. And at those moments of identity shifts, this is when the sort of, feral capitalism at its best really tries to take advantage of people, right? That's when you get life insurance on babies, the wedding industrial complex goes in there, or the funeral industry says, you have to have a $50,000 casket, because like we're emotionally vulnerable. And when we're emotionally vulnerable is not the time to make big financial decisions. So either you make some of those decisions ahead of time, and it's easier for preparing for death, frankly, is to and actually, shameless plug here, I'm doing a series on LinkedIn on preparing for for a loved one's terminal illness, right? Just all the things to do so that if you front load that, then you're emotionally available and you're there, you're not bogged down in life admin, you can be there for them and bear witness. And then at the end, you're also prepared at the end, because you can't, life admin is horrible and it's just impossible when you're grieving. And so, and your loved one may just not have access to the stuff, not want to admit that they're going to die. It's a loaded time. And I think everything that we can do to separate that, either by I'm not making any big decisions for 12 months, period, or let's do all the work ahead of time so that then we can spend the important human time together and not be trying to figure out that Schwab password, at the last minute.
Great advice. Preston, what are your thoughts through a financial psychology lens?
Yes. My mother, she's the most compassionate person that I know. And she said that there's reasons for seasons, and you have to forgive oneself when you're going through a season. And also I hear the word grace, and she uses this word as well. And you have to allow yourself the space to heal. And in these days and times, everyone's trying to achieve something all the time. And life doesn't work that way. There are some guarantees in life. Death is a guarantee. So we have to get real with it very quickly, whether it be ourselves or our loved ones. It's going to happen. We also have to get real with what's happening afterwards, and that is that grief that everyone's saying here on this podcast right now. And we have to allow ourselves the space to not achieve, and to heal, and that be okay, right? Because that is part of the process, and acknowledge how we feel about it, and to be able to go through and transition to the next step. It's so essential to allow that grief stage to happen, whether it be 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. And we don't know what that time frame is, but it must happen in order to get to the next stage. And I don't think that more often than not, our society and even ourselves internally, it doesn't allow for that space. But we don't need permission to take it. We just have to be courageous in taking it for ourselves and allowing it to happen, so we can just be better for it long term.
Thank you for that. Now we're going to bring it home and go to the last segment.
The shift to a second act is not retirement, it's redesign. Start with a hybrid budget. Use Encore income to cover core expenses, leaving your retirement assets invested to grow longer. If you're under full retirement age, know the earnings test, exceed the limit, and benefits get cut. Delaying Social Security may offer more long-term value. Health coverage is non-negotiable. Compare COBRA, the Affordable Care Act, and private options. Affordability varies, but gaps in coverage can be costly. Structuring your work matters too. For freelancers or consultants, forming an LLC or S-Corp may offer tax efficiency and retirement perks like a simplified employee pension plan or SEP IRA. This isn't about stepping back. It's about stepping differently. Build a financial plan that supports flexibility, purpose, and sustainability. With strategy, your Encore can be as financially sound as it is personally meaningful.
Jackie, what did you learn about designing work that supports, not drains your financial freedom?
Oh, wow. A lot. And I love how they were saying redesigning. I do feel like I'm just redesigning my life. So FIRE might be financial independence redesigning early. I mean, for me, a lot of that technical stuff, it is figure outable. You know, the big ones get talked about all the time. And that's, what do you do about health insurance? How do you get your money out of your retirement accounts early? Once I figured those things out, those were just roadblocks. So as I was like Superwoman knocking those roadblocks out of the way, finally, that made me feel lighter and more free to do the things I enjoy. Like one example is I do have my CFP, but it was never my intent to practice one-on-one. But I was very curious. It's something I always wanted. I had the knowledge and the time and the resources to do it. So I went for it and I got my CFP. Now I use it as a financial educator, but if the money was the most important part, this was not going to work. But because I had the money part taken care of, I could say, I want to use this in a different way than it's traditionally used, and I want to customize it. So I felt like I had that ability to use a lot more creativity and design things the way that I wanted them once I didn't have the issue of worrying about every single penny. So that Encore career, typically we're starting with a little bit more of a nest egg than when we're right out of college at 22. And that afforded me a lot of decisions and opportunities that I definitely didn't have when I was just coming out of college. And it makes a difference. I'm in like legacy building mode. It's like, what kind of an impact can I leave on this world? You know, my new grandbaby and everyone else. And instead of only worrying about the money, back then I got the job to pay the bills. Now I work and do things that's meaningful, impactful, and that will leave a legacy.
Jack, what does Encore career planning look like to you?
I love it. First of all, Jackie, I love what you just said. You said legacy. That's one of my favorite words.
Oh,
and so, you know, as I think about Encore planning, I love what you said. You know, a lot of people right now are going through I call it the great pivot. There's a great pivot happening just because of what's happening, you know, in our world right now and in our economy right now. And one of the things that I've been focused on lately, as I personally experience a pivot for myself, and as I work through a lot of my clients who are experiencing pivots, is, you know, you mentioned to that point of having, you know, the ability in if you're a pivoter, and this is like your second, in some cases your third act, hopefully there's enough capital set aside to where now we can take that opportunity to pivot and really pivot on purpose. And as you mentioned, you know, not being able to have to go back and work necessarily for a paycheck, but to truly work where our work is now able to make a real impact. So I think I just quickly share my own story. You know, one of the areas where I know I want to make an impact is with the ultra high net worth community, as well as making an impact on the continent of Africa. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth to Africa, understanding areas that need impact capital. And then I bring those ideas and those opportunities back to my investors here in the States. And I know that by making those introductions, I'm now able to power up 1 million homes. 1 million people now have the ability to turn on their lights, to have internet, because I was able to take my influence and my platform and make an impact. And so that, again, the affordability of being able to be in this third act allows that flexibility for me not to only do what I love to do, where I know I can make the world a better place, but now I'm able to move millions, if not billions of dollars into projects that we know not only make an impact, But frankly, there's some really nice investor returns on the other side as well, when you can understand the opportunity to invest in an economy that is on the rise. And so those are some of the things that get me excited about, call it the second act or the third act. It's about being able to think more strategically. It's about being able to see the world for what it is at the current moment. It's about being able to be a first mover or a pioneer in areas where we're seeing jobs here struggle for people that maybe look like me. I can go to Africa and the market is booming. So again, to me, it's the exciting times of being able to say, I can pivot on purpose, I can reinvent myself, and I can get super creative and innovative.
What a great mission. Mariko, do you coach people to test drive an Encore career before fully committing?
I would say what I could less specific. I mean, so once people know that they're okay, right? So that's a given. I think the questions are more, are you doing something just to stay busy? Are you doing something that is giving you purpose? Is this really what you want to do? Because oftentimes there are people who are kind of half-assing. It sounds sort of judgy, but but they're like not taking their Encore thing seriously, in which case, particularly when it comes to business, say, right? So if you're not gonna like really be in it, and I'm not saying, from a toxic productivity perspective, but I just mean like if you're not really emotionally committed and invested, then maybe the Encore career, don't do the Encore thing just because you think that's what you should do. Do the full-on volunteering thing, the full-on pro bono thing, and just retire. Because I think life is short, and like anything, right? Have clarity about why you're doing things. So assuming that you're financially okay, is the Encore thing because what's your motivation, and how do you structure whatever whatever the house in which your motivation is going to manifest itself, right? How do you structure that so that they're congruent? Because I think sometimes people, their motivation might be here, and then the vehicle they're using is that, and it just doesn't work, and it just creates agita. And when you're in your wisdom years, you should know better than to perpetuate agita. You should just spend the time to do the clarity. And I think sometimes back to what we were talking about with identity shifts, it's like, I'm no longer a productive member of society. What do I need to do? Right? Just get clarity on purpose, figure out the right vehicle for that purpose. An Encore career may not be it. Maybe it's a pro bono career. Maybe it's something completely different. It's kind of like on your deathbed, what are you going to wish you had done in between?
That's a great question. Yep. All right, Preston, how do you help people to align their purpose and financial strategy if they're trying to reinvent themselves later in life?
I'm glad did you just give me a softball right there? Because I love the word alignment, and I'm gonna do my shameless plug with the book on the wall, Wealth in the Key of Life, and then Songs in the Key of Life. My man Stevie Wonder right there, right? Listen, Quincy Jones said, rest his soul, he said, we all have 12 notes. We all have the same 12 notes, and we get to make our song this way. And pivoting into Songs in the Key of Life. Songs in the Key of Life is the perfect album because it talks about all facets of life. Life is a continuum. And it talks about love, joy, marriage, having children, everything that you can experience in life. That's what makes Songs in the Key of Life. And you can play your notes, make your song. So this is what Wealth in the Key of Life is about. It's using your dollars to purchase your well-being aspect. So it's well-secured well-being. And how do you do that? You get return on alignment. Life and money alignment gives your money assignments. And this is how you get your Encore. You have to have that life and money alignment in order to put your money assignments. And then you can think boldly about that and then do that. Because once you figure out what that thing is, everybody has their thing, then you can have that courage and that energy to say, okay, I can block out all noise. I can put my blinders on, and then I can go put my money into those well-being aspects and invest in those assignment areas that I want to go do. And Jack mentioned her, she's over in Africa. Hey Jack, I'm gonna holler at you. Shoot, give me some of that money, right? And then now you have assignment, right? And then Jackie said hers, fire, right? She aligned. That's that return on alignment. She put those dollars over there and made that stuff happen, right? And then I got a big announcement on Monday. Me and my family, we're putting our dollars right there and we're pushing it all in, right? But you have to have that life and money alignment first, but you have to give yourself permission in order to do it. And so I have these 5 permissions of wealth. Who are you as a person? That's your identity, right? What are your preferences? Those are the well-being aspects. Then what is your purpose, right? And then you put that into your financial plan, and then you mix all that together, and then that's how you prosper. And that is the plan. If you don't have that alignment, then you can't do that with moving over to your Encore plan. And it goes back to permission. You don't have to ask for permission to prosper the way you want. And it goes back to what I like to say all the time, and I'll close with this. A lot of people in this world needs to get a big dose of mind your own business, right? And get you some permission to go ahead and get you your Encore life right now by getting yourself some return on alignment. And that's how you get your Encore right there.
100%.
Awesome.
I think we're going to leave it there. This has been an incredible conversation, and we covered a lot. One of my favorite takeaways is that transitions don't create your financial life, they reveal it. And when you slow down, take inventory, and make intentional decisions, not reactive ones, you give yourself the power to transform a stressful moment into a strategic one. I love the idea that you have to give yourself grace. And transitions are far more than numbers on a spreadsheet. I love the idea that you have to take time and process and give yourself grace, because your path may differ from your neighbors and you have to figure out your own way. One more thing is that the idea of having a board of experts that you can turn to, lean on for advice is another great one. And I think that every guest here today said it in their own way, whether you're changing jobs, supporting family, combining finances, or navigating loss. The most important step is to pause, get organized, and act from a place of purpose, not panic. And that's where the real confidence begins. So here's your Inspired Money assignment for the week. Pick one transition that you're experiencing or one that you see coming and write it down. Write down the next financial action that would bring you more stability. It can be as simple as checking your beneficiaries, mapping out your cash flow, reviewing your insurance, or setting up a meeting with a financial advisor or coach. Just one step, because the moment that you take that first action, the whole transition starts to feel more manageable. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for our amazing panel. If you found value in this episode, please share it with someone going through a major life change. They'll be glad that you thought of them. And let's connect on LinkedIn. Find me by searching for Advisor Andy. Inspired Money is created and produced by me and Bradley John Eaglefeather. Bradley's behind the scenes during the live stream. He edited the segments. Chad Lawrence does our graphics, animation, and editing. And each of our guests brought a powerful lens to the idea of navigating change with confidence. To learn more about today's guests, visit concurrentfp.com to explore Dr. Preston Cherry's life money balance, his philosophy, and his book, Wealth in the Key of Life. I love the Quincy Jones quote of that there are only 12 notes. And a quick shout out, if you have not watched Jacob Collier on YouTube, look him up. I've been going down this rabbit hole lately, watching all of his music, and Quincy Jones had discovered his initial YouTube videos and became a mentor and a supporter and manager of Jacob. Check out phenomenalwomen.com, where Jackie Cummings-Koski shares resources on financial independence. And don't miss her Fire for Dummies book or her podcast, Catching Up to FI. Head to alprivatewealth.com to learn more about Jack Campbell's work in wealth management leadership and her mission to mentor the next generation. And explore marikogordon.com or uzumellc.com to dive into Mariko Gordon's financial planning insights, entrepreneurial experience, and decades of investment expertise. Also, check out her series on LinkedIn right now about dealing with terminally ill financial issues. And thank you. Oh, do I guess have anything do you guys have things that you want to plug? I mean, Dr. Cherry already mentioned he's got a big announcement on Monday. Where do we go to get that announcement, Preston?
YouTube. So I got a YouTube channel, YouTube podcast, the Financial Harmony podcast. I've since rebranded Life Money Balance to Financial Harmony, which is the subtitle of my book. So at Dr. Preston Cherry is the YouTube podcast.
All right. We'll check it out Monday. Anybody else?
I have something to plug. Yes. So wealthmanagementaccelerator.com for anybody out there that might be thinking about a pivot in finance. Holla at your girl. Come to wealthmanagementaccelerator.com, and I am going to be I'm rolling out my Rolodex. We want to make sure that you are not out here alone. So all of the people that you even see on this YouTube today, in addition to our esteemed group of financial professionals, we're here to mentor you and make sure that you have access to a true thriving opportunity in wealth management. So that's one of my purposes for the next chapter. And again, wealthmanagementaccelerator.com for more details. Thank you, Andy.
Amazing. Anybody else?
Just a quick shout out. Stress you already mentioned it, but catchingupto5.com. We come out with new episodes every Sunday. We have podcasts and YouTube, and it's just so many late starters. We use the word give yourself grace, and that's a word we consistently use on the podcast as people are restarting and trying to catch up to their financial independence.
Love it. Mariko?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you, Mariko, for always hopping on and joining. Thank you, Inspired Moneymaker, for joining us today and always making, to help get together this community where we can make decisions that bring us closer to living a richer life. We have great shows coming up, navigating market volatility, strategies for investing in uncertain times. Next week, we're going to be off for Thanksgiving, so I will wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving and holiday if you're celebrating Thanksgiving. Inspired Money returns the following week, Wednesday. That's December 3rd at 1 p.m. We'll see you then. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everybody.